Welcome everybody to the Great Northern Film Podcast. Yes. Walt Disney once said this quote in particular. I hope we never lose sight of one thing. That was all started by a mouse. Except, it wasn't started by a mouse. No, it wasn't started by a mouse at all. In fact, it wasn't started by any type of rodent. Am I telling you some sort of embellished lie? Well, no, actually. You see, Walt Disney said it may start by a mouse, but started with someone else. A character whom, if this had been more popular, but through a story of everything else, got lost along the way. Who was this character? Well, before Mickey, he was Disney's biggest creation. He is...
Who are you? Who, me? Lucky rabbit, that lucky Oswald rabbit, nicest rabbit that you ever knew. Lucky habit, that lucky Oswald habit. If you want it, here's what you must do. Reading, writing, arithmetic may often make you awful sick, but if you learn your lessons quicker you'll be through. Don't be scrappy, but smile and do things snappy. Make folks happy and you'll be lucky too.
That's right, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, Disney's first big cartoon star. And today we're looking into his history on this episode of the Great Northern Film Podcast. This is Danny Aaron. Greetings everybody, I'm going to Thomas 5, or Thomas 1.5, and this is the history of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Goodbye, Dinah. Goodbye.
Things are gonna get crazy.
Most everyone's mad here.
So, where did Oswald the Lucky Rabbit begin? Well, to answer that question, we're going to go into the biography of Walt Disney himself. So, let's consider this a bit of a look into Walt Disney's biography first off. Walt Disney was born on December 5th, 1901, and was now just Illinois. How his family would move to Kansas City, Missouri on a small ranch. Disney always had admiration for artwork as a kid, and always had maybe drawing just little sketches if he could. Some of these sketches were just simple and just drawings that he could do. However, in 1914, his life would change forever when he would view a little short film called Goody the Dinosaur. Goody the Dinosaur is revolutionary. Just look at how everything is drawn. This is what style animation or hand-drawn animation is really about. Well, when Goody the Dinosaur is far from the first animated film ever, in fact, I'm actually not sure what the first animated film is. It's revolutionary in a way. Wes McKay was already known at the time for his Little Nemo comics and his Little Nemo cartoons about a character who, in Slumberland, who drew beforehand. However, Good Dinosaur revolutionized animation. Even if you drew a rock one, you had to redraw the whole thing. It was complicated, but it was unique. Walt immediately wanted to become an animator, sometime soon. Eventually, he talked about times he actually lied about his age to go into the army and drove an ambulance as a doctor. After Florida and Denver and the war ended, Walt decided to start animation. However, by the time between Good Dinosaur and 1919, a lot of change happened. For starters, a lot of new animation people were starting to get into the medium, including Raoul Bray, a French Canadian animator who would make such as like Red Mutt and Jeff and Crazy Cat. Right? The Bray Bauer Studio, no relation to Raoul Bray, and the reason I'm saying Raoul Bray the way I'm saying it is because he's French Canadian, just FYI. Right? That would make several early animations. Max Fleischer's Out of the Acorn series, where we would see the creation of Coco the Clown and the evolution of live action and animation blended together in Toons, where it would Toons and the evolution of roller sculpting, where you could draw a character of another human being entirely, and Felix the Cat. Felix the Cat is probably the first really big cartoon star at the time. Felix the Cat is a pretty unique character. He's kind of in a unique animation way, his first cartoon, Feline Follies, is an absolute drug trip of a cartoon. Felix is sent to look after his home with his house. In this short, he's called Master Tom, actually. Master Tom decides to go to his quite a nice little kitten, kind of said. But you know what they say, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And a bunch of mice come into the house and basically create an absolute mess of things. When Felix comes home, he sees the mess, and it doesn't really bother Gage Cats. However, his owner sees this mess too, and immediately blames Felix for it. Felix decides to rescue the female cat, only to find out that she must have one hell of an offspring, because she decides to has a bunch of kittens at his. And I'm presuming that they're all Master Tom's sons/daughters. Not wanting to raise all these kids, Felix decides to go to a gas pipe and put it in his mouth, but then really committing suicide in the fact. Feline Follies is an absolute hellscape and mess of a cartoon. But honestly, it was revolutionary, and it is probably the reason why we have animation like this nowadays. Felix the Cat would become the most popular cartoon character at the time, and created by Pat Sullivan in Australia. Okay? Now, where does Walt Disney fit into all this? Well, in 1922, he finally got a star in animation in the Pesman Rubens Film Company in that same year. There he met a young animator named Iwerks. However, the Pesman Rubens Film Company did not last long. Walt Disney decided to want the company to move over to cells instead. He thought that cut animation was kind of going out of style and wanted to move over to cells, which he thought would be more expensive for the marketing. The company said no. So instead, Walt Disney of Ireland and another person named Fred Harmon all decided to leave the Pesman Movie Company in 1923 and decided to create the Laugh-O-Gram Studio instead. Laugh-O-Gram Studio would help create several different things. There's a sense. Ideas, and were based off of nursery rhyme tales at the time. Fred Harmon left the studio, and instead Hugh Harmon would come in afterwards. Towards his younger brother. Hugh Harmon brought in some of his friends of his own time, including Carmen Maxwell, nicknamed Max, Rudolph Ising, and Israel Freeling, or Frizz Freeling for short. The work was meager and the pay was lots of peanuts. Yes, Disney would have to figure out ways to get through. Hey, they had going for canned beans or even having to borrow a film camera at the same time. Walt Disney decided to keep the missions high. However, Laugh-O-Gram Studio wasn't making much of a profit. I wish I could show a number of how many pictures Laugh-O-Gram's made. However, a good chunk of Laugh-O-Gram's cartoons are considered lost media, and considering the nature of how old these productions are, it's hard to say that it will be found again. Yeah. Well, yes, a lot of pictures from nowadays are considered lost media. Laugh-O-Gram is essentially all lost because there are just a lot of cartoons that just don't just don't have an exact number of them. It's probably be going to the hundreds for all I know. For whatever it is though, Laugh-O-Gram Studio would eventually not last long. It would eventually only close after only having the operations for around 1 year. Why? Well, again, the pay was peanuts and they weren't making much revenue. Dejected, Walt Disney decided to take his last short cartoon to Laugh-O-Gram Studio and decided to take it to pictures. Take it to the cartoon studio. Take it to someone who picked it up. It was called Alice's Wonderland. Eventually, he found one, a person named Margaret Winkler. Winkler had been in animation since the beginning, being producer for Pat Simmons' First Cat and Out of the Inkwell. Disney decided to help out. Decided to see how things would go with Oswald the Rabbit. Okay, because of how things were looking at Major time, he based a lot of the Oswald cartoon gags off of the Ace House Hill series starred by Paul Terry. Okay? And then dropped the series around. She decided to hire Walt to see how this would go. The short was successful enough that she wanted Walt to get a whole picture series starring in the next year. The Alice comedies would start a girl named Alice, played by Virginia Davis, along with her cat sidekick Julian in Wonderland. Walt rehired a lot of his friends from the Kansas City department. Iwerks was among them, along with Hugh Harman and Will Eising, and Carmen Maxwell and Israel Freeland. However, while the Alice comedies would be made, another change happened. A more villainous figure into the picture. Charles Mintz. Charles Mintz is known as a villainous authoritarian animator who would be known to be very grouchy and annoyed with everything. The reason why he entered the picture is because he was married to Margaret Winkler, meaning that he was being kept in designer. Because of this, Margaret Winkler had to really think hard of how to make this thing work. While Alice comedies have been proven to be successful, there was two characters. While they mixed live action animation very well, they were also pretty cheap in a sense. Hence, the animation was cheap is what I mean, not the actual budget. These cartoons cost a lot more than they were bargaining for. Because of the mixing with live action animation, they had to really work hard on both series. In a sense, they actually lost money on a few of these things too. And two was the fact that Alice's comedies were also very, very derivative of other properties. The animation and live action properties were based off of First Cat, based off of the Out of the Inkwell series. And Julius himself is a blatant off of First Cat. And I'm not being rude to Julius here. The cartoons themselves are perfectly fine, but they are pretty similarly made. And as such, both cartoons were made in the same sense. Walt Disney had to figure things out fast. By the time, it did help also that Winkler, that both Charles Mintz and his brother-in-law George Winkler were both very much against these cartoons, and told Disney that he was wasting their time and money. Frustrated, Disney decided he had to figure out a way to make Oswald make comedies more and more appealing. Well, the animation did get better in these. Unfortunately, it just wasn't moving fast enough. In 1927, Walt Disney eventually ended the Alice comedies. Again, like most things though, there's actually no exact number on how many Alice comedies there are. In fact, a good chunk of them are lost media, so I'm unfortunately unaware of how many there are. Okay? Instead, Walt Disney decided to make a new character. Now we're talking about Oswald Lucky Rabbit here, guys, okay? Oswald Lucky Rabbit was made to his personality animation. The reason why Rabbit was picked is because of three reasons. One, they could not make another cat. Not only was Julius a thing so we made, but also cat characters were probably the most common animals we've seen. Not only the fixed cat, but also the crazy cat at the same time too. 2. The animal had to be visually distinct. Again, create a cat wasn't there, but he also didn't want to make a fox character too, as that could be considered too similar to other characters too. Instead, he decided to make the cat. And he made more than like the same thing where the cat was being made. Just cat. Instead, he decided to make him rabbit. And 3, they made him rabbit because rabbits' feet are considered lucky. Hence the name Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit's first cartoon is called Poor Papa. In its absolute hellscape of cartoon, Oswald must have one hell of an offspring seed, as a bunch of storks deliver a bunch of babies to him. And Oswald, not realizing this, decides to bring a bunch of storks down his rain pipe. Because of, however, the Oswald baby is having an absolute mess of his house. And it ruined all lot of his planes. Realizing this, he decides to grab his shotgun and decides to start shooting at the birds. One of them hits it right in the butt. In a sense, Oswald this however makes the storks even more determined to deliver more of his seed. Not wanting this, Oswald decides to tie his chimney in a knot, thinking this initially dejects the birds, thinking that he's won. Unfortunately, they decide to dump him down his rain pipe instead. Oswald gets a faucet full of bunnies and ultimately faints. Poor Papa is an absolute drug hell of a cartoon. However, it was also incredibly a mess of a cartoon too. And I don't mean the actual picture. Yes, picture is an absolute mess and what happens in it, that is not a lie. But what I mean by is that the cartoon was rejected. Why? Well, for a few reasons. One, the animation is pretty bad, honestly. If you look into the cartoon itself, the animation is pretty jerky overall, and it looks pretty much like a mess. 2 is that Oswald himself is too old and disheveled. He appears as an old man wearing suspenders the whole time. In actuality, Oswald maybe a bit too old for the cartoon. He comes off as scruffy and goofy at times too. And it doesn't come off as more scrappy rabbit that he should be nowadays. Instead, Poor Papa served as a template. Walt Disney realized this too, and eventually, in a letter to Carl Emley, he said that he knew Poor Papa wasn't his best work. Instead, he decided to focus on his next cartoon, Trolley Troubles. Trolley Troubles is a different problem entirely. Oswald is out conductor of a trolley, and decides to enload children his way. However, the title is not inaccurate, as Trolley Troubles is of course where he had to deal with a bunch of trolley issues, where he goes on a massive run through the whole thing. Trolley Troubles is also where he has to go, handle chaos, whether it be broken tracks, an animal on it, a cow on the line that refuses to move, or hills that just Oswald can't seem to climb up on. Because of the last of the issues, he has to know how to cook goat. It pushes him up the hill, but a bit too fast, as Oswald eventually has to go on a bunch of crazy ride to bring tons of children out, before careening off a cliff and ending the cartoon right then and there by rolling it out. Trolley Troubles is much better cartoon. Unlike Poor Papa, where the lunacy is built in almost from the beginning, Trolley Troubles allows the impact to build and build and build, allowing for a better contrast to the cartoon. It seemed to work, as Trolley Troubles was selected instead on September 5th, 1927. However, his next cartoon, Old Teacher, would introduce something brand new to the Oswald series, romance. The girl rabbit named Fanny. In this cartoon, Oswald and cat character, unrelated Julius of course, compete for the affections of Fanny. Fanny would appear in the next two cartoons, Mechanical Cow, Great Guns, and All Wet. However, the next cartoon, The Ocean Hawk, would not use Fanny at all, but instead a different character entirely. A bear character named Pete, who would eventually morph into a cat and become Mickey's main foe. I'd say Pete is actually the oldest character to be made at the same time. From Disney. Being in the Oz comics in 1925. Right. 5. His girlfriend appeared in this picture, like his daughter, Hortensia, a black cat. Why did they make Oswald's girlfriend a cat? Well, it would be a contrast to Oswald himself. After all, Oswald was a lucky rabbit, and black cats are known to be famously unlucky. So, in a sense, that's why she was made into a cat. However, all Princess Megan's daughter are considered lost, and as such, we don't really know. In fact, several Oswald cartoons are considered lost nowadays. I'll list the following cartoons that are considered lost right now. Megan's Daughter, Rickety Gin, Harem Scarum, Sagebrush Sadie, Riding Plowboy, and Hot Dogs are all considered fully lost cartoons, while numerous others are considered incomplete in prints. Okay? However, so Oswald was the first cartoon to feature Hortensia, though, will be considered rival Romeos. Where a gag of a goat using sheet music was used. You'll be seeing a gag like this in the near future when another cartoon comes out the same year. Yeah. In total, 27 Oswald cartoons were made. Among these include Poor Papa, the rejected one, and probably Oswald's first space cartoon, Oh What a Night, which introduced medieval times in a sense, where Oswald, or let's say Hortensia from Pete in medieval times. The Oswald cartoons were seemingly a great success, as you can see. However, there were going to be some issues later on. Okay? As I mentioned before, Charles Mintz was a grouchy and temperamental boss. However, he was also kind of untrustworthy. How was he untrustworthy? So he would do things that made him uncool and kind of made him a bit of a danger. How so? I mean, Oswald was a successful character, right? Well, Oswald may be successful, and Disney may have created him, but we soon find out that he didn't own him. As we'll be continuing Oswald's story after the break.
Rated E for everyone. In a world long forgotten, the legend you thought you knew will discover the power of the brush. And become an epic hero.
So, what do I mean that Walt would eventually went to trouble with Oswald? Well, believe it or not, despite creating a character, Walt Disney did not own the rights to Oswald. No. Universal did. And Universal did. In 1928, Walt Disney went over to Charles Mintz, asked for a pay raise to make better and better Oswald cartoons. Mintz did not think so. Instead, he asked for a pay cut. If he didn't get a pay cut, he would lose the rights to the Oswald cartoons. In fact, he couldn't make a single Oswald cartoon to save his life. Okay. So Walt Disney decided to walk and look at this. But he must have his own staff back, right? I mean, there's old staff. Someone's there, right? Yeah, not so quick. Mintz had also been coaxing away almost every one of Disney's animators. Every animator except was being coaxed away. The exceptions, however, there was a few exceptions. Okay, Walt Disney's latest hire, Les Clark, and of course iWorks decided both rejected the deal. Wanted to stay next to Disney. Okay, Mintz coaxing away many of his animators in the same veins. Walt eventually had to walk. Eventually took a train ride back home. While on a train ride, he found an idea, a cartoon featuring a mouse. He pitched the idea of a character named Mortimer Mouse. However, his wife Lillian did not like the name Mortimer. Instead, the name Mickey was chosen instead, and as such, the character of Mickey Mouse was born via tweaking Oswald's design. In 1928, Walt Disney issued a trademark on Mickey Mouse, make sure that he would never ever lose the rights to Mickey again. Well, that wasn't until 2024 when Mickey found public domain, but Mickey Mouse is still trademarked to the Walt Disney Company, and that trademark will probably not expire for a long, long time. It just means that you can use them and Disney can get copyright claims on YouTube for that design, Mickey. Just want to point out there, okay? Okay. Anyways, because of how Mintz decided on how to own the full rights of Oswald, he had to ways. However, on November 18th, 1928, the animation world will change forever with the release of Steamboat Willie. Walt Disney made the first ever cartoon cartoons with synchronized sound. While sound cartoons were not new either, this one was revolutionary as it had sound go in time with the music. And we can intentionally relate. The first Mintz cartoons released, however, were mainly silent still. Yes, I'm not kidding. Charles Mintz's Oswald cartoons were actually silent still, despite the fact that sound was starting to become an innovation in a sense. How so? I mean, what do you? If he was getting made in sound afterwards, okay. Instead, he started stripped off the set. However, Mintz would finally strip off the sound in the. Okay. However, while they were made in sound, I hate to remind you that another thing that a lot of Mintz cartoons are also lost media. In fact, there are probably only maybe 3 or 4 that have been found. Okay. Found, including the first sound Oswald cartoon ever made at time. To rectify this, however, Carl Laemmle Mintz did not like Mintz had done, and he did not like George Winkler's rule of the cartoons. Winkler was a terrible boss as well, and eventually got rid of a lot of things. Instead, in 1929, not long after he finished up with Oswald, Mintz and the rest of his animation crew were all let go from Universal. Yeah. So, okay, most of the animation crew would move over to Warner Brothers, where they would create the series The Looney Tunes. Mintz would eventually move over to Columbia. However, and while Columbia Screen Gems did have some success, they remain mostly forgotten about nowadays. Instead, a different person was hired instead. Walter Lantz. Walter Lantz had been in animation ever since it began back in the late 1910s, early 1920s. However, he hadn't really done much afterwards. However, allegedly, he won it via a unique scenario. A card game. What? Walter Lantz won it via a card game? Yes, a game. He eventually met Carl Laemmle, and Laemmle decided he could show him the rights. Walter Lantz eventually ushered in all the rights to make cartoons for Walter Lantz to studio. Walter Lantz's first Oswald cartoon was called 1929's Race Riot. Right. As such, he made more about. Race Riot is pretty simple, but it got his idea down and put the fish put his foot in the door. Okay. Oswald's next invention was something that's very unique. In 1930, he would star in a Technicolor feature called King of Jazz. This will be known as one of the very first cartoons to ever use color in its animation, using 2-strip Technicolor color. The Mintz Oswald's and some things. It's worth noting that that a lot of the mint Oswald cartoons would include similarities to Mickey cartoons at the same time. However, Walt Disney didn't seem to mind that much. In fact, funny enough, they were friends. Yes. Despite everything else, Walter Lantz and Walt Disney were actually friends in real life. And even though yes, Walt Disney had the rights to Pete still, he still allowed him to use the character in some of his shorts, along with Hortensia, who was renamed Kitty in the Lantz shorts. Back onto Oz. Going to Universal. So, in 1930, he would gain gloves and shoes for the first time. And in 1931's Africa, he would gain his own popular theme song.
Lucky rabbit, that lucky Oswald rabbit, nicest rabbit that you ever knew. Lucky habit, that lucky Oswald habit. If you want it, here's what you must do. Reading, writing, arithmetic may often make you awful sick, but if you learn your lessons quicker you'll be through. Don't be so wrappy, but smile and do things snappy. Make folks happy and you'll be lucky too.
Africa is also one of very few Oswald cartoons to be in the public domain. Hey, just if you want to know, okay? Hey? At the time, it's also hard to finish who his voice actor at the time was. Some of the voice actors, some of the characters at the time, including Pinto Colvig, the voice of Goofy, and actor Mickey Rooney. By the 1930s, Oswald would become a huge name, and eventually he would release and his first cartoon, The Merry Old Soul, would even win an Oscar, being nominated for an Academy Award. The only time Oswald would ever win an Academy Award be nominated for an Academy Award on anything. In 1935, Oswald's old design last appeared in the cartoon Monkey Wrenches, which also featured characters Meanie, Miney, and Mo, which would develop their own series at Universal. In this cartoon, Case of the Lost Sheep, this time he was made incredibly different. Designed to be more of a realistic rabbit in a sense, he was changed into this new modern design. This design would remain for the remainder of his career at Universal. This design is also what they still use today, in case you want to know. His name was shortened in the next cartoon, Dr. Oswald. Just we call him Oswald Rabbit instead of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald would continue the adventures until 1938 beat the Kitty. Kitty afterwards. Okay. 1930, however, his final official cartoon would be 1943's The Egg-Cracker Suite, part of the Swing Symphony series. The reason why Oswald fell out of favor after 1938 was probably just because it's causing changing trends, as Walter Lantz wanted to move away from things. He also stopped making black and white cartoons around the same time, and instead making color cartoons afterwards. Okay? 2 years after Oswald's last cartoon, Kitty, Walter Lantz would debut his most popular character.
Guess who?
Woody Woodpecker. Woody Woodpecker would become a huge name in the cartoon industry, and eventually make the Walter Lantz studio have a big boost instead. Oswald would make 2 late appearances in 2 Woody Woodpecker cartoons, with his last time appearing in 1951's The Woody Woodpecker Polka. Around the same time, he had made appearances in comics too, featuring some characters afterwards. However, things would radically change for Oswald during his time. Okay? In 1963, President John F. Kennedy was shot and murdered by a man named Lee Harvey Oswald. The name Oswald fell out of favor because of that. And because of this, Oswald basically had to retire in a sense. He would have been retired from cartoons, but now he's retired for good. Oswald Lucky Rabbit is now his comic run had also ended not long afterwards. It seemed that Oswald's fate was now grim. However, that would all change in the 2000s. Oswald was now having a new fate and a new time. In 2003, Warren Spector pitched a game called Epic Mickey. Epic Mickey was feature a idea where he plays Mickey Mouse and he explores a world of forgotten cartoon characters in time. Among them would have been Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. However, Bob Iger, who Disney's creative officer at the time, told him this: "We don't own Oswald. So how is this going to be possible?" Well, that all changed in 2005. After Michael Eisner resigned, Al Michaels decided to wanted to leave Disney's ESPN. So Disney and Universal decided to make a trade at the same time. Disney made a trade of Universal would get Al Michaels while Disney would trade Universal for all the Oswald cartoons that Disney had made, letting them keep the ones that Walt Disney made. They both agreed, and eventually, Oswald the Rabbit was now re-owned by Disney, and this time for good. Eventually, Oswald would continue to make more pictures, including being made for a new Disney Treasures kit and being made for the video game Epic Mickey. Now, I myself have played Epic Mickey, of course, being that I own a Wii and a Switch, so I own the Wii Brush Edition too. The game, and for me personally, the game is very fun. It's a great game to play if you have the time being down. Okay, it's not exactly the easiest game to play after all. I mean, the cam is controlled by a drunk his drunk uncle, and there's no real voice acting in the game. However, Epic Mickey was the way that many people, including myself, got introduced to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. I myself didn't even know the history of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit until after I finished Mickey, and I learned that myself. I had watched videos on it, but I hadn't actually really learned the history of it. In a sense, Oswald is the king or the ruler of this world, known as the Wasteland. However, the Wasteland has fallen to plunge in peril thanks to a character known as the Shadowblood, a creation that's created by Mickey Mouse himself. You play as Mickey trying to avert the world back to normal. Oswald is a very jealous and personality. Initially, Oswald was meant to be the villain of Mickey. No joke. He was to be the villain. However, after that deal was scrapped, he eventually changed into more of an anti-hero at times too. He helps out Mickey, but he's very much not pleased with the mouse. He has a very much of a grouchy personality and doesn't trust Mickey after all. In fact, there are many times in the game where Oswald will snap at Mickey in some ways. The Wasteland is basically what if Oswald was the big star of Disney and not Mickey. Even an opponent statue has Oswald replaced with Mickey. It's very unique in a sense. All the characters also reside there too, having a bunch of forgotten Disney characters at the same time, including Horsecollar, Clarabelle Cow, and even Pete makes an appearance, despite him not being forgotten. Epic Mickey sold well, and eventually released a sequel in 2012 called The Power of Two. Oswald also later on made appearances on Disney theme parks as walk-on characters, and also had Oswald's Garage, a short-term production area at the same time. He also would later make appearances in other movies stuff too, including Paul Weathish's Mickey Mouse shorts and in Get a Horse, as well as having a new theme projected for him in his own live show.
Rabbit, that lucky Oswald rabbit, nicest rabbit that you ever knew. Lucky habit, that lucky Oswald rabbit. If you want it, here's what you must do. Reading, writing, arithmetic may often make you awful sick, but if you learn your lessons quick, just wait till you'll be through. Don't be scrappy, but smile and do things snappy, make folks happy, and you'll be lucky
In 2022, Oswald was returned to animation, but the short that was short was in 2022, using some animation again. Although this time it's digital ink and paint. Because of the success of the Mickey, and all the other things, Oswald has remained conscious ever since. And although Oswald's rights now gone to the public domain in 2023, it's unlikely that Disney will ever stop using him. As it's been announced, in 2025, the creator Favreau, will be making an Oswald cartoon series. Well, we don't know what this Oswald cartoon series will look like as of yet. Yet, the future looks bright for Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald the Rabbit went through quite the journey. Initially, he was created by Disney and became his first ever cartoon star. However, due to a series of issues and rights, he was eventually taken away from Disney and eventually had to end up somewhere else. Ended up at Universal, where he was created by Lantz. Lantz right afterwards. And after a series of issues afterwards, Oswald eventually disappeared from the public eye forever until 2006, when he was rebought and for the game of Mickey. And he has recaptured his fame and his glory to this day. Today, Oswald the Rabbit is celebrated as a character who has become very famous. And while he's not as famous as Mickey or his crew, he is still a character that we still love to this day. If you can find much time, please watch any of Oswald's cartoons, especially the ones made by Disney. They are great features of animation that really show the medium at its finest. Before we end this podcast off, I'd like to give a thanks to the YouTube channel Extraordinary Peoples. As they made a 31-minute video on Oswald the Lucky Rabbit that was my main source of inspiration for this whole topic. The video's link is in the description below as if you watch it. Please subscribe. Please, if you want to watch this podcast anywhere else, you can watch it on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, or wherever you watch podcasts. Please continue watching more. Every dollar, every dollar helps out. And for $15 a month, you can watch this podcast right here on that site. You can also subscribe to any other sites after all. So that's all for this episode of the Podcast. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.